Welcome to the September update of the Galileo Capital monthly review. We're kind of living in interesting times, and I feel like if we were doing one of these every month, we would say exactly the same thing. It's interesting times, and today is no different. I'm joined by one of Galileo Capital's veterans. I know she doesn't look like it, but she's been with us for more than 10 years, Monique Brasler. Monique, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks so much, Warren. What I've started picking up from client meetings is that even though markets are doing quite well over the last year, clients still feel like they're losing money. Why is that?
I think we've got a lot of psychology at play here, where 2022 was kind of a shocker of a year, especially globally. International stock markets lost money, international bond markets lost money, and I think that kind of pegged our expectations when we came into this year. That where we didn't really hear a lot of good news. I mean, there's no resolution around Ukraine. It seems that that's just carrying on. Lots of destruction there. The interest rate story, kind of carrying on in the US and Europe, and the cost of living crisis all around the world. And the same in South Africa, where the rand is either at 18 rand or 19 rand, depending on the day or the week. And then the JSE also either doing really well or kind of taking a bit of pain. So I think that the noise, like the volatility, where everything's just going up all the time, kind of creates that sense for us that we're not in a good space as a stock market. And so it's worth when if you're a Galileo client looking at your statements, it's worth just taking a view and seeing what your 1 year returns have been. What have you been doing over the last 1, 2, or 3 years? And just interesting to note, I mean, I did a quick check before we did the recording, to do this recording, I should say. And the average balanced fund in South Africa over the last year is up somewhere around 8 to 12%. And if you show people that in their that kind of a growth rate in their RA or their living annuity, they're quite surprised. And so to your point, that it feels like we're losing money, but we're actually not. And in dollar terms, the US market is up, and so is the world market. In rand terms, the JSE is actually not doing badly. Doesn't feel like it again, but it's actually doing okay. So we are making money, all of us at the moment, based on what's happened over the last 12 months. And at the time of recording, we haven't quite finished August yet, but the start of August was a bit of a shocker, to be honest. But it's kind of coming back again. So I think the long answer to your short question, Monique, is that the volatility is the reason, and that volatility causes this kind of angst and discomfort. And then always, it's worth remembering that the performance of the JSE doesn't relate to the performance of the South African economy. So while the South African economy is really struggling, we're still sitting with very high levels of unemployment, the rand incredibly volatile, we still have inflation. That doesn't translate to what the stock market's doing, because the stock market, just as a refresher, a lot of the shares on the JSE, about 70% of the top 40 earn their money outside of South Africa. They earn their money in dollars, in pounds, in euros, yen, and the like. So when those markets are doing okay, and the companies that trade on our exchange are doing okay on other exchanges, they actually lift the whole of the JSE up. And I think that is exactly what's happening now. And maybe just worth noting, the interest rates are extremely high now everywhere in the world, South Africa included, which is lousy when you owe money to banks, or to other people. But it's starting to become quite a nice place for people who have cash or who actually own government bonds now, because the price of the bonds might have been hurting, but all of a sudden you're getting 11 or 12% a year interest on the bonds that you own. And if you've got a retirement fund in South Africa, if it's a living annuity or an RA or pension or provident or anything, all of those own government bonds. So we are earning a bit of interest and actually making some money, even on the things that aren't always that exciting. So my kind of sense of this is, we think when interest rates peak, and we're probably not far off peak interest rates now in South Africa. Maybe, I mean, there's a small chance that we get another rate hike. I don't think anything beyond one more. And that means that sometime next year possibly we'll start to see interest rates going down, and that's really good news for people that are invested in government bonds, because that means the price of government bonds will go up. Means the stock market will start to get a little bit of a tailwind as well, and the economy will get a bit of a breather, and that's all good news for investors. And the same dynamic will apply, especially in the US, which is of course the big market around the world. And so I think, for people that are feeling that things are not going well, I mean, we agree, politically in South Africa, politically around the world, things are not going well. But at the same time, there is quite a lot of good news to come around investment stories. And it's all really big fundamental moves. Interest rates start going down rapidly in America, for example. That's a massive tailwind for investors everywhere, including South Africa. So I think my conclusion for this, Monique, is if you feel like you're not making money, you probably are. If you feel like the world's in a lousy place right now, you're probably right. But if you expect that things are going to get better from here, without being kind of fanciful or kind of creating some science fiction story for yourself, I think there is a really good chance that investors do continue to make some money over the next 12 to 24 months. And we don't need a lot to go right for that to happen. So I think just fuss bait, hold the course, and watch this space. I think markets are recovering for us. So I want to pivot, Monique, because we're coming up to September, and if I'm not mistaken, there is a thing that the financial services industry does in September called Wills Week, where they talk about wills and the importance of wills. Uh, and for us, I mean, I mean, I need to say it's a no-brainer. Everybody needs a will, and equally that it needs to be quite current. If you've got married, got divorced, had children, lost a parent or anything, your will needs to be updated when you have major life events. So just, kind of my public health announcement is Wills Week is a good time to kind of just check in with everybody and make sure your wills are current, make sure that, if something's changed recently, you get your will updated. But I wanted to talk to you, Monique, a bit more around the wills and our offshore investments, because I think quite a lot of wills aren't necessarily well structured for people that have built up, portfolios overseas. And of course, overseas portfolios is a big factor for our clients. And how should we be dealing with that?
So what I've picked up with a lot of our clients when we're looking at their investments and we look at their will in conjunction with that is that we've spent a lot of time and money and effort sending money offshore, but then all of their assets are bequeathed to a South African trust. So that means that in the event of their death, that all that money all that time and effort basically goes to waste because that money has to come back to South Africa. So it's just worthwhile having a conversation with your financial planner and saying, but how can we structure this differently so that that money can remain offshore? Because in most cases, that money isn't actually money that these clients have to live off. They're leaving it there for the next generation or the generation after that. So there are structures that can be put in place or plans that can be made that we can just plan better for that. Because you also don't want people who are living offshore getting money from a South African trust because there are in some countries there are major tax implications attached to that.
So, I mean, I think it's a great point that, especially in places like Australia, the US, they don't really give a lot of space to trusts anywhere in the world, especially in a jurisdiction that's not their own, and can be very tax prejudicial. So I mean, I think just you made some really important points we should just emphasize. One, if you've got money overseas and you've sent it out, with tax clearance process over years and years, just as a reminder, it might sound obvious to some, but for others it might be news. You're not obliged on your death to bring that money back. Your will can stipulate that that money goes to your beneficiaries in that jurisdiction, wherever the money is. So for example, if you're sitting with a portfolio in Switzerland, you can say that I want my beneficiaries to get that money in Switzerland, and then it's up to them what they choose to do with that money. Uh, it is important that you note that in your will and that you are clear about what you want to do. And certain jurisdictions, Switzerland is one, Ireland is another, and those are two of the very big ones with offshore money. They recognize South African will, they recognize South African letters of executorship. So you don't need to go and get a will in Switzerland if your portfolio is in Switzerland, or if you've got unit trusts in Ireland, as an example, your South African will cover that. If you are in a position where you've got overseas assets sitting in a jurisdiction that doesn't recognize a South African will, then it's important to make sure that the two wills talk to each other. In other words, that whatever you want to happen with your overseas assets will be dealt with by your overseas will, and your South African will needs to line up, understanding what's going to happen with those overseas assets. But Monique's point around making sure that you don't just bring the money back simply because your will was structured a decade ago and you haven't really thought about it since, where then suddenly everything needs to come back either just to South Africa, to your estate, or to a South African trust. Both of those might be really poor planning outcomes if your purpose was to leave the money to the next generation. There are obviously going to be instances where you do want the money to come back because you need to take care of beneficiaries who have expenses in South Africa, and that's absolutely fine. But I think it is really important when you're building up these offshore portfolios to make sure your estate planning around this is really good. It doesn't always need to be complicated. It just needs to be good. You just need to make sure there is a plan for what's going on. So Monique, I think we're going to wrap up there, and I think just for our clients, that are finding times to kind of be stressful and difficult, I think that's unfortunately normal now. We are living in a state of flux everywhere in the world, and kind of we see it with the BRICS summit, that's currently happening in South Africa, where the kind of world order is being reset, and we see, for example, the BRICS countries, the size of the BRICS economy, the countries that are represented by BRICS, is bigger than the G7. The seven used to be biggest economies in the world. That tells you that the world order has changed. That tells you that there is going to be a kind of a resettling, and that will create a lot of uncertainty. It also creates a huge amount of opportunity. And the interesting thing for us sitting in at the tip of Africa is we're well placed to kind of take advantage of what's happening in the West, the central and the east of the world, because we look at all of that all the time. And so we are focusing on those. We are looking for opportunities for our clients, and while it's unsettling, we do enjoy the volatility that because it gives us the opportunities to buy quality assets at a good price. So I hope that gives you a sense of comfort. Monique, thank you so much for joining us. Let's hope the October update shows lots of growth and lots of good news. And if it doesn't, don't worry, we'll all take care of this for you.
Thanks, Warren.